What's going on? This is Bobby J, and this is City Chapters Podcast. Today's chapter is with James McKain. James McKain is the creative director at Houdini Studio, a Spokane-based full-service creative design and development studio. I'm also switching seats. I like it better over here after Brennan interviewed me on his podcast. So if you're like, why is he over there? That's why. It's better view, and I can control things better from here for this interview. So that's why I'm switching the seats up. And James and me met a couple weeks ago at one of their Solarium socials.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Me and him kind of just hit it off, and he's really the only guy I talked to there that whole time, at least in a deep conversation. And I was like, dude, you'd be perfect to come on the podcast. So thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about Houdini Studio and your role there.
Yeah. So Houdini Studio, we've been alive now for, I think we're coming up on 4 years around that. We're an interactive company. We specialize in pretty much anything that's digital and immersive, but we also branch out into things that are marketing, more focused on marketing, like websites and things. But most of the time where our passion is at is doing things that are a little bit entertainment based, highly immersive, something that augments a reality in some way. So we can do AR, we can do VR, but also we're really focused on installations too. So we want to augment installations with a little bit of a digital flair to it to help make it something that's really interesting and fun and engaging. And really we want to have a lasting memory and be memorable. So that's like, if I were just to one sentence say what Houdini is, that's where our heart is at. But because we're digital and we're creative, we've got a full stack house of developers, and we've got quite a few designers who are really good. And so we branch out and do all kinds of things. But yeah, that's kind of the elevator pitch of Houdini.
Yeah. So you guys are really focused on, like you said, augmented reality experiences, basically. This would be using your smartphone to have more augmented experience. And that could be, like, for listeners that maybe don't know, that's kind of like where a reality surrounds you in a photo that's not really there. Or I saw, like, you guys did that Sonic Prime augmented reality setup in LA. That was LA, right?
Yeah, that was down in LA. That specific experience, that installation, it was basically like this pillar that stood and it had a screen on it. And so people could walk up to it and Sonic would be on screen and he would be dancing and they would dance with him. And then it would kind of record and augment the video and put overlays onto it. So that is definitely one example of how we're augmenting reality. We also are, like you mentioned, phones. We're constantly trying to augment entertainment things. So scan a QR code and then maybe you can pop like a dinosaur out on a table or something. And so we're trying to figure out how to gamify that. And that's another aspect of what we do, where anything that we do, we're trying to gamify so that we can really create that emotional connection with somebody that's using it.
So, like you're saying, I was on the website and I was trying to understand a bit more, because it's like you guys are kind of like futuristic almost in your approach of like what's coming as far as marketing and the way to like help people visualize your brand, experience the brand more than just like this flat screen surface website or experience. So how do the games implement for a brand? Could you like walk through how you guys would take a game and how it would be helpful to a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned like installations and physical events. So like expo events, a lot of times what we do is those events will have booths and they'll have sales reps there. And so we try to provide tools to sales reps to engage the people they're talking to. So we've actually built games for sales reps. And in that case, it isn't an AR thing. So AR is not always like the right tool for the job. But in that case, it was a touch screen, and it was a big touch screen, and it had a giant game that we did the UI, the UX, the graphics, the code, everything. And so now that was actually for AT&T. They take that experience. We did that like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, probably about a year and a half ago, and they're still using it. So they'll come to us and we'll reskin it for a different thing, and it'll be different content. But those two games, it was like, for them specifically, it was kind of this maze aspect, and it kind of had this trivia kind of aspect to it. And it also had like special sound effects to it and all kinds of stuff.
Okay, that's cool. So that makes a lot more sense. So like if you're at a trade booth, you want to get people walking by to interact with your booth in a whole different way. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I know you guys have some big clients. I've seen Disney and some other people that you've worked with, obviously like Sonic Prime. These are, some of the, big things going on in culture. So that's really cool to highlight that a company from Spokane is doing work with behemoths in the country, in the world. Yeah. So it's awesome. You specialize in UIUX, right?
Yep.
Design. Yep. And can you tell us what that really is?
This might be a dumb nerd joke, but the industry likes to call it UIUX, but to me it's UX UI. And it's one of those things where like when you try to switch that up on people who are in the industry, they kind of look at you weird, but really like it is UX UI. So UX is user experience, and so that's about how something behaves, like what's the flow, the user flow, how are you getting into it, once you're into it, what's the path for it, what are the features and things like that. So UX is honestly kind of a behemoth. There's like so many different facets to it that arguably you could probably hire 3 specialists to do UX. Like research, information architecture, design, things like that. Information architecture is a little bit specific, but UX is just a giant beast, and but it is what makes a product feel good. If something is bad UX, most likely you're probably irritated or angry at whatever you're using, and it's probably because the UX design was done really poorly on it. Or like another example of bad UX is if you just can't find information, but you know it exists because you stumbled on it once before, but then you can't re-find it.
Oh. I know. Okay, that's why I'm glad I asked about that question, because, man, I have that experience often with people. Like how, and it can be from some of the biggest like brands or biggest app developers, where it's like, how is this like this when you guys have billions of dollars? It could be Instagram all the time is changing things. It's hard to figure, like there's all sorts of simple things on these big apps that are like, how can they operate like this and not know that this is irritating the user? And so that is going to be UX, right? The experience that you're having while getting it. Okay.
The experience you're having, where information's located, the kinds of like bells and whistles you get. So like with Instagram, like having filters on photos, that was a UX design of some kind, adding some value there.
You know what, sorry to interrupt you, but like this creating a story on Instagram, their UX, now I sound like a professional.
Yeah, there you go.
Their UX. But that, dude, it is so terrible. Like if you drag the photo and it overlays like the ads or like different things that you added, then you have to drag the photo way off and then bring back the names or like things like that.
Yeah.
Always drives me crazy.
Yeah.
That's one example of UX.
Yeah, it is totally. I think the challenging thing, like UX design, and Apple is always the person that people talk about when they think UX, because
as being a goal, like setting the tier high, or
well, sometimes they get looked at for standards for sure, but they also get attacked first, right? Because they're constantly trying to kind of innovate and redo things a lot, rethink the wheel a little bit. And so people commonly will kind of hate on Apple because they changed something, right? So like maybe there was a feature in your phone that you're used to it being in one area or doing one thing, and then they move it or change it, and now all of a sudden everybody hates Apple because they changed something, right?
I've experienced that with Apple a lot too,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
And so it's really UX design is human-centric design, right? We're doing something for humans, and humans don't like change. And so UX design can be a little bit of like a double-edged sword where you're trying to design something that improves our lives, but it's not always, even if research shows that that's the right design, it's not always the thing that makes users happy. So unfortunately, like I think big companies, the reason why maybe they don't have their product isn't as good as we think it should be. There's so many layers behind the scenes that we just don't see of why that's happening. So I'm a little more forgiving towards companies that are bigger when maybe they're not hitting the mark on UX design. Where I do get mad are companies like Spotify, where you can tell that they're purposely trying to lock features behind paywalls, and they just keep removing more and more value.
Spotify's been pissing me off lately.
Right.
Like the difference between how you can heart a song on your desktop, but then on your phone, it's a plus now feature to add to a playlist. It's just not, you can't just heart it anymore.
Sure.
It's two different interfaces on a desktop to mobile.
Right.
And that really irritates me.
Yeah.
There's things like that I've noticed too, like Spotify has been doing.
Yeah.
With Apple, one thing that really irritated me about messages was it was so hard to organize, because as we've gotten into this day and age where people want to text everything about business instead of email, and then sometimes you email and then they text you back instead of email you back. It's like, it's hard to keep track of it all. But at least they added that feature now where you can mark a message as unread still, like read it and then remark it as unread, so you can at least kind of flag it in some kind of way. That's helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. It's cool to understand a little bit more of that world and what you do.
Yeah.
Because I was like UIUX, I read about it, but I was just like, I still don't get it.
It's
but the way
huge.
you explained it, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So UI specifically is the beauty, like it's the skin, right? Once you have the UX plan, then you go through and you just make it sexy. That's really what UI is.
Aesthetics of it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I joke. It's actually UX UI, even though the industry likes to say UI UX.
Right.
So.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're originally from Boise, Idaho. What was it like growing up there for you?
Yeah. So on top of that too, I grew up with family in Spokane. So I was constantly traveling from Boise to Spokane. So for me, Boise was always really, really small. I would say until about 2007, 2008 was about the time it started getting its boom.
Right.
And I remember as a kid traveling to Spokane thinking I was coming to the big city. And around 2009, it like kind of swapped.
Yeah.
So Boise for a long time was very like farms everywhere. Where I grew up, I watched all the farms, the land just disappear and get developed.
What area did you grow up in?
I was in Cloverdale and Ustick, which is right on the
okay.
edge of Boise to Meridian.
Yep.
It's literally like a block from Meridian. Even
I
though
know
it's
where
still
that is.
Boise.
I lived in Boise for some time, and I kind of stayed near Garden City and Caldwell, between those areas.
Garden City's cool now.
Yeah.
It got completely flipped.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool area.
I haven't been back there in a long time though. Like last time I was there was probably like 2012 or I don't know, maybe a little after that. But
It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
I left in end of 2019, and I went back just this spring. I went back for Tree Fort Music Fest, and so between 2019 and 23, it had changed enough that even I wasn't familiar with certain parts of it because they've been developing. That city's just developing like crazy.
Right.
When I was there in 18, I'm pretty sure, or 17, I'm pretty sure they had 5 or 6 like sky cranes up at one time. And they were just building all these hotels and high-rise buildings. And apparently right now, the tallest building, or is currently being built. It's getting ready to be the tallest tallest building in Boise when it's done.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Oh, I was like, tallest building like in the States?
No.
Like,
for
oh
Boise.
shit, they're going big.
No, not that big. No. But it's going to be the new tallest in Boise.
Yeah. Because they didn't really have when I was there like too many crazy tall buildings. Very nice downtown area. It was always very clean there. I always liked that aspect, and from what I've heard, they've kind of been able to retain that, being very clean there.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I loved about it there. It was just like everything's so clean downtown. I mean, Spokane is grimy. It's gotten better, more towards Main Avenue, like towards the mall. They've really kind of helped maintain and secure that area. But
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
I like what they're doing with the riverfront. I'm pretty excited to see Spokane beautify itself a little bit.
Oh man, yeah.
You're right. Like Boise, I can't believe how much resources and energy they put into just maintaining the cleanliness of that town.
Yeah.
It's a hyper clean downtown.
Yeah, it is. It's unreal, honestly. When you come from Spokane to a place like that, you're like, wow, everything feels so good, you know? So I like that about cities that really put that as a focus. I mean, and I'm not saying we don't put that as a focus. I just think things unraveled here a little differently than they did in Boise. So
yeah. Well, the thing about Boise too, that I think the reason why it was able to maintain that is just because of the amount of migration that was happening, because California's been migrating there since before 2004. They've been going there for a while.
Right.
Now Texans have been migrating there. I think Oregon people are, Washington people are. So you've got some big states with big populations that are all kind of pushing towards Boise. So there's a lot of money going into Boise right now, which kind of back to your question, growing up, Boise was the vibe of Boise was very personal and very personable. Like for a long time, Boise had the reputation for being a very friendly city. And to me, I saw that change. I don't think Boise is, like on the surface, when you go to visit, it seems that way. But when you live in it every day, and I'm sure this is true for any city, you see kind of the darker edges of it. And I think there is some amount of just kind of not cruelness, but hard hearts going on there that's developing. So
why do you think that is?
I think part of it is the amount of migration that's happening.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of bigger cities coming in with some baggage. There's also, for whatever reason, growing up there, you see that people who are coming there, they think they're going to show us how to do a city right. So there's a lot of anger between people who are locals, versus somebody who is coming in. Even if that person's lived there for 5+ years, there's still this constant battle a little bit. But I think the problem is Boise is just getting really big. I think the last time I checked its metro population, which in 2019 it was almost 1.3 million, from what I remember. I think it was like 1.2 something, pretty close to 1.3. And so 3 years later, I'd be interested to see where it's at now. I haven't looked, but it's just blowing up. It's growing too quick.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, you a lot of farmland around where you specifically grew up.
Yeah.
And did you go to a smaller high school out there then, or?
Yeah, I was actually raised religious. I had it for high school. I had to commute 40 minutes one direction, and that was out in Nampa. So I went to a place called Gem State Academy, which was a Seventh-day Adventist spot. I'm not religious anymore, but that's what I was raised in.
Yeah.
And it was a small high school. We were like, I think total population was not much more than 150 students. It was pretty small.
There's quite a bit of, Mormons or Seventh Adventists. I don't know the proper, if there is Mormons, but we have a lot of family friends in Boise that are Mormons.
Yeah.
being that it's like really close there to Salt Lake and everything.
Yeah, for sure. It's a melting pot. You have a lot of Catholics, a lot of Latter-day Saints, I think is what they like to be called.
Okay.
And then Seventh-day Adventists. And there's everything. You have Baptists. It's a pretty good mix. But I would say probably the most dominant is probably some between Mormons and Catholics, I would think.
Yeah. So you said Latter-day Saints and Seventh Adventists.
Yeah.
Are they both Mormon sects or?
No, they're
I'm
pretty
getting
different.
confused then.
Yeah.
Latter-day is Mormon, right?
Yep.
What is Seventh Adventist then?
Seventh-day
Because I thought
Adventist-
that was still a Mormon sect. So
no, it's
I need
not
to be
actually.
educated.
No worries. And we don't have to spend too much time on this one, but
No.
Seventh-day Adventists they're Christian core at their base. They worship on Saturdays. They believe it. Actually, I'm pretty rusty on my Seventh-day Adventist, and we'll see if I can actually say it right. But Saturday is the seventh day, like when Christ was risen. So that's the day that they honor. And so the big difference, I think, is like Seventh-day Adventists still believe in like a Christ, where I think Latter-day Saints don't. I think they believe in something different. So they're quite a bit different there. So I think just fundamentally, they're highly different.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they are. What is the sect that knocks door to door?
That is Mormons. I'm pretty sure.
Mormons do that, but there's a Christian sect that does it too, and I forget the name of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. It's not Seventh Adventist though. Either way, okay. Well, we don't need to go down the religious wormhole. I was just curious because I needed to be educated because I made the assumption for some reason that the Seventh Adventist was still a part of Mormonism, but now I know.
South Park might be your like Wikipedia research.
Yeah. South Park, man, they know what they're doing over there.
They're pretty funny.
So you told me art has always been an escape for you since a young age. Why did you need this escape?
Yeah. So I was raised in a fairly abusive household, and I wasn't really taught how to like process what was happening because it was happening in the moment, right? And it happened for a lot of years. And so art became this way for me to basically express what was happening inside of me. And so I started at a really, really young age. My earliest memory was of sitting in a Dorsey music guitar store at the bench, and I was just with crayons, like just drawing, so like really young. And that was something that I did every day for years and years. I still have all my old sketchbooks on a bookshelf, and I've got probably, if I were to take a guess, like over 10 sketchbooks still from just the years of growing up. And I went back and like looked through them, and it's really angsty. Like there's a lot of anger in there. You can tell there's a lot of pain going on. And so that was how I just was kind of processing what was happening with me. And then also it was sometimes the way that I used to express myself to others who I felt like I didn't know how to like use words to tell them what was happening. So that was what art was for me for my entire childhood, all the way through into college even. And then once I hit college, had to kind of learn to unwind that.
Yeah. Do you think art then saved your life in a lot of ways? Like without that expression, without that, I mean, it's hard to know the difference with it or without it for you, right? But that was obviously your scapegoat, your way to survive what you were experiencing and dealing with.
Yeah. I think, it's hard to say whether it saved my life, but what I can tell you is I can't imagine life without art.
Right.
It's so like in my DNA that, not like, I don't even know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing art in some fashion. I really don't.
Like art is your life, right?
Yeah.
Almost. It's not like it saved your life. It's just it's a part of who you are. And like you said, it's in your DNA, which I kind of was like thinking that through as you were explaining it, because like, why is it that every day you were doing that? You know what I mean? Like it just was coming out of you. Like, that's what I'm going to
obsessively. Like I just couldn't put pencils down. Yeah.
Well, at least, you know, we don't need to get into the details of the abuse you experienced, but I think it's really good that you had that within you to express it out and get it out, because I think one of the most important things of like trauma is like, how do you get it out of you in a healthy way? And healthy doesn't necessarily mean like it's going to be beautiful and there's not going to be anger and all these different things, but it needs to get out. And art was your way of dealing with it, getting it out of your mind, out of your body, you know. And that's why people say journaling is good and all these different expressions of like, how do you get it out of you? Yeah. And you being able to practice that from a young age, even though you probably didn't know that's what you were doing at the time. But just having that probably was really helpful, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think being able to express yourself, being able to have that outlet of, I'm going to use the word vent, but because you are kind of releasing it, but you're still like in it. So it's hard to say it's a total release, but I think that without it, you could probably very easily feel lost, and especially if you have no one to talk to. So, yeah, I would say that it just was invaluable. Like, absolutely needed it.
Did you have siblings growing?
Yeah, I have a younger sister.
Younger sister.
I'm older by 3 years. And she was pretty into art too. And yeah.
Okay. Kind of a decent age gap there. Were you guys close growing up? Did you have support from each other, or?
Yeah, I think for the most part we did for a while. She did at some point. We kind of separated, and I know that she felt a little bit abandoned by me at one point. And you're going to get into it later, but when I left town and left home, that was when she started to kind of feel on her own. So we fell apart a little bit, but her and I have been recently starting to talk again, which is awesome.
Good.
And trying to rebuild.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So after high school, you went to Boise State University, taking part-time credits, and you were selling snowboards during this time. I love snowboard. I'm an avid snowboarder, so I wanted to know more about this. How and where were you selling snowboards?
I was selling them at Gart Sports, so not even the cool shop, even the cool shop in town. But it was Gart Sports before it became Sports Authority.
Right.
And I was selling boards there, and I was even just doing it part-time. But I started snowboarding in like 2002 during high school. I played basketball in high school too, and I was told I wasn't allowed to snowboard.
Yeah, they told me that too, so I said, I'm not playing basketball then.
Same here. I quit basketball so I could snowboard.
Yeah.
So,
At Bogus is where you're riding, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Bogus Basin. Bogus Basin was riding there. Did a few trips down to like Heavenly. Went there, and man, the one time I went to Heavenly, it was the most amazing trip ever. Like, we were there 9 days, it snowed 7 of the 9. Wow. It was fresh powder every day.
Refills.
Whew.
I'm getting excited talking about it, man.
I got my first spine chill just last week thinking about snowboarding this year.
I'm so excited for the season. Honestly, I didn't even care about summer this year. I'm like, just get back to season, man. I just want to get back to season, yo.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, well, that's cool. I mean, you obviously love snowboarding and found a way to kind of sell something you loved. This was helping you like with college expenses and just getting through that time while you were going there.
Yeah, this was actually when I was selling snowboards. It was actually the very first semester out of high school, and so I wasn't even full time at college. So this was really just kind of some play money, trying to figure out where I was going to head in life. Yeah.
Okay. So you joined the military because you were feeling you didn't have a focus in life yet while you were going to school. You just kind of weren't sure of what you wanted to do. So
Yeah.
you joined the military. What branch did you join?
I was Navy Seabees. I was a mechanic, and so I don't know if you know anything about the Seabees. or not.
Construction battalion.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. One of my best friends was a CB.
What was his emphasis, specialty?
Electric.
Electric. Cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he did. He's an electrician now.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's what he was doing then.
Yeah.
I would guess if I remember correctly. But yeah, he did a tour and whatnot over in the Middle East.
Cool.
And yeah.
How long was he in?
I think he did his, well, let's see. He was in the reserves, I think. I don't think he actually did a full 4-year. I think he's in the reserves, but he did a tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I was 4 years in. I had a weird contract. Like typically I think you have a 6-year contract with 2 years. Like it's always an 8-year contract. And typically it's like 6 years active, 2 years something else, however you want to spend it.
Yeah.
But there's also weird ones where you can go straight to reserve. And I had a really weird one. I don't even remember what it was called, but essentially you do 2 years active and then you get to decide how you want to spend your other 2, and then you're free to go. But for those, like I said, 8 years total, those remaining 4 years, you're always on call basically for if we go to war or something. So I did 2 years active down in San Diego and on Coronado Island. Fib 1 was the base, ACB 1. And I was mechanic working on Humvees and never actually got deployed. There was quite a few times where they were spinning me up to get deployed. And then just something happened where logistically it didn't work out, whether the unit ended up not going, or one of the cases too is my unit that I was newly attaching to was already there, but they were getting ready to come back. So they were debating whether to send me out to meet them or not. So just weird logistical things. I never got deployed.
Yeah.
So I actually carried a lot of guilt because of that for a long time, thinking that I somehow didn't do my duty. But toured, traveled a lot within the States. They were always sending me out to training. And so there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that I've had time to think about it, he definitely was in the reserves. But yeah, he did his tour. And I mean, I guess, did you feel guilt because you really wanted to go? You felt like that's kind of just a part of being in the military, is getting to go on tour, and you felt like you didn't get that chance, and that guilt wasn't necessarily you did anything wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't get to choose this. They don't let you a lot of times obviously choose. You're going or you're not. You know?
You can totally volunteer if you want. If your unit is locked and it's not going where you want to go, you can absolutely volunteer to go overseas if you want.
Yeah.
But I just for me, that wasn't an option because I really wanted to feel like I belonged with something. And so I wanted to stay with my battalion. I didn't actually want to leave them.
Yeah, which is a loyalty thing,
a little bit, and it's camaraderie. It's wanting to feel like you're part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And so it was really important for me to know the guys I was with day to day and not be constantly leaving. So that's one reason why I never volunteered. But I think what you said is pretty dead on. You feel some guilt because if you join and then you don't go, you feel like you somehow have skated out of duty somehow.
Yeah.
Even though it was just a logistical thing at a level that was way beyond me.
What year did you graduate high school?
I graduated high school in 2004, and then I joined in 2005.
Okay. So you would have been a senior when I was a freshman. And then you joined in 2005. All right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I have not met many Navy CBs. I think you and my friend are the only two that I really know personally.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the only reason I knew CB was construction battalion.
Yeah. That's cool that you know someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a cool branch. They feel a little bit like a dying breed, just because their usefulness and their utility is so specific, and war has changed so much that the reason we had them in the first place doesn't really exist that much anymore. They're still building bases, so it's not like they don't have a purpose, but it's just
even the way they build them now is like a lot of this stuff is like manufactured, so it just pops up real quick and everything's kind of ready in a whole different way than before, right?
Totally.
So yeah, prefabbed or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I feel like, you know, people, I thought about joining the military out of high school too, because I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to join the military, but to be honest, I didn't, because I didn't want to be a pawn to our government. That was like, but I wanted to join for the reasons of, you know, learning discipline and toughening up and kind of being thrown into like, you know, weakness is not going to be allowed here. Like, you either going to toughen up and make it through this or you're not. And I always wanted to know if I had what it took, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And I feel like there's, you know, there's training you can only get from the military that you can't get anywhere else really as a civilian, I feel like, you know. And so those are the reasons. I still think about it to this day. You know, sometimes I'll have that urge, like, I should still join the military just to like do a 4-year, you know what I mean? And like, I think about it, like the importance of being there for your country, even though I might not agree now that as I've matured, I may still not agree with everything our government does or all these different things, right? But I still have found that there's a big value in serving your country and protecting and being a part of protecting what we do have, because it is important. And these, you know, we are, you know, I think, we have a lot of problems, but so does every country. And I think we've done a lot of great things for the world as well. And, you know, I don't know, I'm still weighing through it, but
it's a tough topic because unfortunately military gets lumped in with politics, right? And so honestly, one of the biggest eye-opening things for me is like, as a kid growing up, you think that anybody who's in the military is a type of politics, right? And I learned that it's incredibly diverse. Like you have every single political view in the military. So there's not like one type of view. And so that was really eye-opening for me of like, wait a minute, you're this and you're that and you're this, and realizing that we're all in it together still, even in the military. And so that really was important. That was a big growth point for me. I think you hit on something too, where I think it's true that I think where our country is doing some things that doesn't make us very proud. And I also think that just in general, citizens are losing pride in our country. And I think military helps instill some pride. It's kind of like, it's like the thing of like making a lawn, right? Metaphorically, you have a lawn and you take care of it and you take pride in it because it's your job to maintain it. Because if you don't, who does, kind of thing. And I think that that's something that we could use more of, is just having some innate pride without it being like something that we use to beat other people up politically. Like, I think that gets muddy too really fast. So I don't know. I think to sum it up, like, military gave me some pride in my country. It absolutely did some of the things you talked about, which is I joined because I didn't have a good example of how to be a man growing up. I never was taught that by my father.
Me either.
And military absolutely provided me some backbone. It provided me some lessons. It taught me how to grow up a bit. It also taught me how to like take ownership of something. And I'm going to say own up to things too, because if you mess up, it's on you, and you got to be able to talk about why I got messed up. And then also just like being able to deal with conflict in a way that, because it's not okay to just deal with conflict by violence, right? Like you can't deal with conflict by blowing up in its face and punching and having a fight. So military, every day there's conflict, and so you got to figure out how to deal with it using your brain, using your words. You can't put your hands on anybody. And so there was a lot of really important life lessons that the military taught me, that when I first came out of the military, I was actually a little bit jaded. I didn't really appreciate my time in. And then I would say that after probably like 4 or 5 years later, after getting out, was when something clicked, and I was like, I really am glad I did that. That was the best way that I could have spent some of my time.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, it sounds like you were saying you learned probably a lot of patience during your military time, of like how to deal with conflict without reacting emotionally or like negatively, like being able to be learning emotional intelligence almost during that time, which I think is huge. Obviously, our society as a whole really struggles with emotional intelligence, the way people react, and just, it's just like absurd, some of the things that happen out here in this world, just out in our streets, the way someone will just quickly turn into, I've seen it in soccer a lot. I play a lot of soccer, and I'm in my early 30s, and there'll be guys in their 40s like throwing tantrums on the field, trying to hurt people, saying like just like, I can't even believe the words that come out of these guys' mouths, and they're supposed to be my elder. They're supposed to be the men in our society, and they act like little boys and children, and intentionally try to really hurt somebody because they're a little upset about being brushed on or something. Like, it's
and they're
just
doing
crazy.
this in front of kids.
Oh yeah, in front of kids.
I live across from a soccer field, and there's, I don't know what time of year it is. I think it's getting ready to gear up, but like every weekend there will be tournaments, and the entire field will be filled. Yeah. And I hear guys going off the handle.
Which fields do you live by?
I'm over by Ripien Field.
Ripien? Is that is that off Trent area, or?
Yeah, kind of. It's right off Euclid near Beacon Hill.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Honestly, I've stopped playing soccer because of it. I just I can't deal with it right now, and I just needed to clear my head and my just give me some space from it, because it's just it's not enjoyable when you have to play with these type of men, but they are boys, and there's just no leadership in these realms anymore. And I that's the one thing I always think probably was the most attractive to me about the military is, there is a real emphasis on, discipline of how you behave and how to control yourself and being forced to learn control. You know what I'm saying? So
even when somebody's in your face yelling at you, right? Because the way that movies sells military is that it's a bunch of unhinged emotional children that just scream at each other the whole time, and that's not what it is at all.
Yeah.
There's a lot of yelling, but it's meant for kind of what you're saying is like to train you to be disciplined and not be fazed by it and still be in control of your emotions and not react to it.
Yeah, that's something that I've definitely been trying to work on throughout my years, because like I say, when I was younger, I felt like the military would have been good because I feel like I could have been able to channel my anger through the military in a way more healthy way than the way I chose to. I just kind of went the opposite way. I went outlaw, basically, got involved in street stuff. I was just so mad at the world. had no mentorship, no leadership. And I think the biggest benefit I could have encountered from the military at that young of an age is submitting myself to be around men.
Yeah.
And there was no men around me and the things I was doing, and no men to take me and like be like, wake up.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why are you choosing these things when you have all this opportunity to do these other things that would be way more beneficial for you? I guess it was probably my cry for help. Nobody cared, you know, and I was maybe doing all this stuff is like, does anybody even care that I do all this bad shit?
Yeah.
My dad doesn't. Like, he just wants me to be happy, but that's not mentorship.
Yeah.
That's not initiation in the manhood. And I guess that's another good way. And I think I respect actually countries that, you know, like you have to do a 2-year service at minimum. Like this is your initiation into being a part of our country and being a man in our country.
Yeah.
And we don't have that. And it's really apparent to me, the problems that our society face because there is no initiation in the manhood. There is no process of becoming a man here. You know what I mean? It's just like, well, you know, you go to school, you either go to school or, you know what I mean? But I feel like military is like maybe one of the best processes of teaching you how to be a man.
It can be really good. I won't lie though, not everything in the military is good.
No.
And not everybody in there is a man. Like you definitely have some children. You got some gang stuff going on.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Sometimes it feels a little bit like prison rules sometimes.
Yeah.
But you do have an opportunity to meet some really good mentors. One of the guys that had the biggest impression on me, his name was CM1 De Leon. And like I told you, I was being sent off for extra training across the country, all over, from East Coast to West Coast, up and down. And like it seemed like every time I got back from something, I had a day, and then I was being sent back out to another training. And he was my shop supervisor. And I got back from one of these trainings, and I went and asked him if I could chat with him. And I was at the point where you can let some of your military bearing go. You can actually be personable and talk to him about stuff. And I just said, hey, can we chat? And he closed the door and he's like, what's up? And just so you know, CM1 De Leon was a fairly short dude. And he was the loudest dude in the whole shop. Like he would be yelling and screaming from one end, and you'd hear it all the way across the yard at the other end, and you'd know it was him. And it wasn't because he was an angry dude. He was really funny, like a really likable person. But you always knew it was him that was yelling. And he got really quiet with me. And he was like, what's up? And I was like, why does it seem like you keep trying to get rid of me? And then he just kind of like, everything just came down. He's like, I'm not trying to get rid of you. I see potential in you.
Yeah.
I'm sending you out because I want you to get better, and I think you can be.
Yeah.
And that was CM1 De Leon. And I didn't, again, like at the time, couldn't appreciate it, right? And years later, after going to college and getting out of college and becoming someone else than what I was when I was in, it kind of hit me how big of an impact he had. And to this day, I wish I had sent him a letter to say thank you, but I never have.
Still can.
I know.
Yeah.
Need to.
Yeah. I'm sure he would really appreciate that, you know. And something that I think about is, you know, different people that have made an impact in my life, and I might not have realized it at the time, but, you know, some of those people and the things that they did for me have lasted a lifetime. I just couldn't appreciate it in the time, you know, and know it in the time. One guy in general was Randy Johnson, this farmer from Medical Lake. He had 2 boys that went to high school with me, Garrett and Randall. And those boys are some big boys, tough farmer boys, you know what I mean? And but their dad, he's just like, I don't know, that classic rancher, you know what I mean? And he always even when I started going off the deep end on stuff, he always just, every time he see me, give me a big hug, and never treated me he never treated me different. And there was just some things that he had said to me over the years that, you know, have stuck with me. And I got to see him recently, and I just like, man, gave him a big hug. I was like, yo, thank you for being one of the only men in my life. You know what I mean? Like, you're one of the only people I had growing up that I felt like was a real man, because the other people in our church growing up, very judgmental, or like, oh, he's smoking pot now, or like whatever, right? And he never cared about any of that. It was just about always, you know, showing love and just being an example of a good man to me, you know. So
I think we have a problem with, I don't know, a problem. I think there's a lack of mentors. I think that having people like that.
Huge lack from my perspective.
Yeah. I think people like him are really inspiring, because I think what's, for me, like what it is to be a man is not to be the biggest, loudest, most violent person in the room. I think it's definitely to be the most stable foundation, calm, rock solid sort of presence for people. And I think that what I'm hearing is that's what that guy was for you.
Yeah, I agree. I've tried to, you know, like define what a man is for me. And I think a man to me is the person that continuously makes the right decisions for himself and his family. Like continuously, like whatever that is for yourself, whatever those positive choices are, you continuously make the right decisions. Because if you make the right decisions, then people can see that in you because of your self-confidence that you gain as a man, as a person, when you do the right thing for yourself. And I think our society has normalized so much dysfunctional behavior that these people that want to yell they're a man, they have no idea what being a man is. They just want to, you know, lash out or compensate in some type of way to prove they're a man. But when you're a man, you don't need to yell that. You don't need to prove it. It's just your actions and how you live your life are the voice of that. Yeah. You know, and to live your life correctly, you got to be making the correct choices. No matter how big or small they are, you're making the right choices for yourself, you know. And I think I'm finally tapping into that myself, you know, just based upon things that I've cut out of my life. You know, I remember telling my mom, and I think most young men, teenagers can go through this or do, you know, you think you're a man when you're 17 years old. You know?
Totally.
And I had no idea what being a man was, or you know, like you're trying to figure out how to be a man at that age, sure, but you don't know anything, especially the type of kid I was. Like, I was nowhere near being a man at that age. And I'm not saying a young man at that age cannot be a man. I think there's really intelligent young people out there that have way better emotional intelligence than I did at that age, because mine was a train wreck. I was just like, just so pissed off, you know. And I was not making the right decisions for myself. Yeah. Not even close to making the right decisions for myself. Yeah. And I didn't have anybody to stop me, really, you know. And through my own experience and then getting locked up, that was kind of the first time I really got a hold of like, okay, these are the decisions I made that have led me to this place. And, you know, like being locked up too was like, I realized there's not men in here either. Like this isn't, you know, hardened criminals in here that are intelligent. They're mostly tweakers and really lost individuals. And I only probably met, you know, less than a handful of men in there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that was a changing perspective, but I still feel such a major lack of having elders in my life. It breaks my heart like every day. You know what I mean? Because I think that's one of the biggest important things that was in the past when you were in a tribe. Like they're, the men transferred into being elders, and they were always in the tent or the campfire, and you could go talk to them about your current problems. Like, I have nowhere to turn to in my life currently to where I could talk to an elder man about what I'm dealing with, because we think we're all alone in this stuff nowadays.
Yeah.
And people that maybe have really great family units can talk to their grandpa if they have a open grandpa, but like, we just don't have that anymore. And it's destroying what I think it's destroying us, because we don't have any tribal unit anymore. We don't have any real, I feel like community, the word community is so lost now. Like, people want to claim they have community, but like, when it really comes down to like the essence of what I imagine community is really like, it's not that. Community now is like, yo, how can I get people to help me so I can further my agenda?
Totally.
And we blanket it with being like, oh, I'm trying to make the community better. And there's just this like lack of like really tight knit, in it together essence. And, like, I was reading a book recently. It talks about how we just put our elders in retirement homes and hide them away from us, and we don't listen to what they have to say as if it's not relevant to us, and we don't hear their wisdom anymore.
Yeah, I think there's still so many lessons that we could learn if we gave them more of a voice again. I think society tends to, because you're old, kind of shun you and put you out, kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And not because they're like they're so debilitated that they can't even contribute, right? Like, we just don't give, like, for whatever reason, our society at a certain age just says, oh, you're old, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's like now in the current generation. I think that
No respect.
there's lack of respect there, but we're missing out on, sure, maybe some things need to be adapted because times change, but there's so many lessons and experience that we could tap into. But it's a two-way street too. I think that sometimes there's a lack of respect coming down.
Yeah.
There's times when it should be more of a collaboration, I think, and not just a talking at, like, oh, you should do it this way because I've been around longer. It's like, well, I don't know, maybe not.
Well, yeah, I agree with that, because I've always said, like, parenting styles that tell a kid what to do because I said so is not going to be healthy for that child.
Yeah.
You need to walk them through so that they can have critical life thinking skills. And I think that works all around every age group.
Yeah.
You want to be given advice. You don't want to be told what to do. You know what I mean? But the advice has to have real meaning behind it and experiencing behind it, because like I said, one of the things my dad only gave me advice on is just like, I want you to be happy. Like, that does not help me deal with what I'm dealing with. It doesn't help me to understand how to critically think through what I'm dealing with as a young man. And so there's a lot of great books that I've read about this problem we have within our society, surrounding manhood and becoming a man, and why really most people don't even really, like, truly, if people were very honest, I don't think a lot of men know if they're men anymore. You know what I mean?
Even as we're talking, I still question, like, do I really know, right?
Yeah.
I think it is really hard to know. It's hard to pinpoint. Even like what you were saying earlier about, I wish we had more mentors. At some point, we become the mentors, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know when that is, but eventually,
I think we're close. Because anyway, finish your thought there.
That was about it. I just think it's such a moving. It's hard to know sometimes, and I think there's like some easy giveaways, like what you were saying earlier. I do think that when you can take ownership of yourself, you were saying when you were in that, there's still a lot of children there. And and you said that you figured out how to kind of take ownership of yourself. And that was something that I learned in the military too, is to actually have some discipline, take some ownership.
Yeah.
And stop blaming others.
There's a great book by Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. Have you read that one?
I love Jocko Willink. Yeah. I was listening to his podcast. I did the audiobook on that one specifically. Yeah, Jocko's awesome.
Yeah,
he's really cool.
But I love his concept on extreme ownership and, accountability. I think that's another thing we're really lacking in society. And this is like, as I get more educated and experienced with this podcast, these are more topics I want to dive into way deeper because I think we're really suffering and we want to just act like we're just going to keep on pushing and plodding forward, but we're not going to talk about these real problems that we're having. And I'm not saying people aren't talking about them. I know there's other podcasts that talk about this stuff and all that, but I think the more we talk about it, each of us, the better it's going to help us find healing in what we're dealing with. But yeah, therapy, this is kind of my therapy.
This is therapy.
Right. Yeah. This is my therapy. My other friend, Zach, he said that kind of same thing. He runs a podcast. Happy to be here. So shout out those boys. But he's like, hanging out with friends and therapy is in 2023 is a podcast.
It is 100%.
So I really, enjoy these conversations based on that aspect because I thrive and really need these type of conversations, and it's hard to find them in day-to-day life, and this allows us to lock in and dive into the topic. But, that is one thing I think for me and my perspective on a man and an adult and just a solid, good person in general, no matter your sex, is extreme ownership, accountability, being able to admit where you're wrong, because none of us are perfect. Like, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to treat each other, no matter how much we love each other, wrong at some point, and it's just about being willing and able to have the confidence really to be like, I'm sorry. That was wrong for me to treat you that way or act that way towards you. It's just where I'm at right now, or whatever the case is. Even when I've even gotten to a place where, somebody does me wrong, I still find out like, okay, where could I have been better? Where could I have done something better to maybe not get this type of reaction out of this type of person? Even though that wasn't warranted, where was I maybe a little skewed there? And I think that's huge, and those are the type of friends and people that I have around me in my life now, are those that can willingly and freely admit that, hey man, I'm not perfect and I do things wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the most healthy aspect in relationships, is when both sides can be like, this is where I was, this is where you were, we're both sorry. Now we're stronger because we can move forward from it.
I think having self-awareness is key to being able to check in with yourself and figure out what's really going on. And a lot of times you can't do it in the heat of the moment, but I'm very consistently, you give me 24 hours and I'll get right to the core of like what was really going on with me. And then I can communicate in a much more honest, sincere way. And just that internal practice of being able to like sit with yourself quietly and check in, like what's really going on with me and what's my internal dialogue like what are the words I'm saying inside my head that no one's hearing.
Yeah.
And then figuring out what that narrative is, because there's so many times like we can just spin this narrative in our head that's not reality, and it charges us emotionally. So then all of a sudden, because I got this story in my head and then someone does something that hits that nerve and I fly off the handle or I react in a really poor way, it's because something else is going on and I've spun myself up emotionally. I'm already pre-charged to react a certain way, right? So having that like self-awareness to check in and like check what you're saying to yourself and what emotional state is it putting you in.
Man, I struggle with that so much.
It's a hard one.
The negative self-talk or just telling, spinning up stories of why I'm not where I want to be, or, all those different things. Yeah. And having the awareness, like you said, when, somebody maybe says something to you that kind of is spot on with this thought that you have about yourself. And then it's like, oh, they see it too, or whatever. And that can definitely make you trigger and react, defensively,
Totally.
even though that person maybe didn't even intend it that way. It's your perception is just like, oh, I'm under attack.
Totally. Most of the time people aren't even thinking about us, and we think everybody is, right?
Yeah.
But then most of the time when we react to things, it's only the story we have.
Yeah.
And it's not actually the story they have.
Yeah, that's really, really good to have that kind of self-awareness. And I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. Like sometimes that ultimate self-awareness, when it runs deep, it's kind of hard to operate in this world sometimes, you know. Like sometimes I wish I didn't have that, and I could just be an NPC, but
yeah, just selling onions on the side of the road.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. If you're an NPC, I don't know if that's real or not, but sometimes it feels that way. But I don't know. But that could just be maybe my own self-identity, my own ego trying to figure out how I'm different in this crazy world that we live in. And because it's insane. Honestly, it's really insane what we live in and wake up to. It's got a lot of beauty and it's got a lot of darkness, and making sense of it all. Maybe it's not always the healthiest thing, because you kind of just have to accept, I think, life sometimes, and trying to go too deep on why it's good, but ultimately it can lead you to some really hard places and dark places.
Yeah.
So I'm learning the balance, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Not trying to overthink things too much, accepting things as they are, and not beating myself up as roughly as I used to, but still keeping my morals and my values. Also, like, just keeping who I want to be, not giving up on that. Because I've hit in phases where I'm like, yo, I could just disappear, live in the woods, and like not deal with trying to attain societal success that I've always thought I wanted, and I still want it, but the reasons why are different. The type of success that I want is different. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I
think one thing that I thought of when you were talking just now is the way that we talk to ourselves. You were saying there's a lot of like, you're hard on yourself, right? And I really think that if we could learn to be nicer to ourselves internally, we could be a lot nicer to everybody else around us. I think most of us are walking around with some really nasty self-talk that's self-directed, and we're just constantly beating ourselves up.
Yeah.
And what you were talking about, kind of like, that was what popped into my head.
Well, and there's all these things, I think, as a young man or a person that you think are cliche sayings, but one is like, you truly have to love yourself before you can love others.
100%.
Like, that's not a joke. Like, that's not just, you need to deeply love yourself, because if you deeply love yourself, respect yourself, you're not going to treat others ill or wrong for no reason.
Yeah.
Now, if you love yourself and respect yourself, there's a certain point where a threshold is crossed, and you have to let somebody know you're crossing boundaries, and you stand up for yourself because of the love you have for yourself. But you don't need to react to them in a negative way necessarily to let them know where that boundary is. It's just a stern reaction, But you see a lot of people for no reason treating other people wrong and ill, and that's because they don't love themselves. Yeah. They hate themselves. They're not okay with themselves. And so they have to bring it out on others because
so.
they don't like themselves. So why are they going to like you?
Yeah.
And if you don't love yourself, how could you truly like have the grace to love somebody else for their mistakes when you can't even accept your own mistakes?
Especially when somebody goes off the handle without any warning sign, right? They
Right.
just go from 0 to 10 immediately.
What just happened?
And where did that come from? And chances are it came from because they're just so cruel to themselves when they're talking to themselves privately.
Right.
I think so.
I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely think so as well. Another great book I've read on this one changed my life, is The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz.
I haven't heard that one.
He wrote the Four Agreements. Have you read that one? Well, he's read a few books. His I think probably the most famous one was the Four Agreements. I think that was his first book. But The Mastery of Love, that book changed my life. And it really, that, I guess where I find mentorship from men is in books. You know, Don Miguel Ruiz, he's from a lineage in southern Mexico, the Toltecs, and they have ancient knowledge that they've passed down generation to generation to generation about life. You know what I mean? How to deal with it. And this is generational knowledge that goes back thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so this is like ancient wisdom about the heart, yourself, how to take care of yourself. And just the way he explains self-love in there is like nothing I'd ever read before.
Cool.
And it really, and I need to read it again because I know I need to check back in because my heart has been broken lately. You know, I've been really struggling with it. And I'm like, every time I've read that book, I don't even know, 5-6 times already. I don't ever reread books like that, but this is one of those books like you go back and it just really helps center yourself with like how to care for yourself.
Are you a highlighter?
I just started highlighting.
Yeah.
Just recently I read the 5 a.m. Club and I was like, I'm rereading that book, and I'm highlighting stuff now, and then I'm rereading The Richest Man in Babylon and highlighting. And I wanted this. I've seen highlighting and all that, you know, and marking pages is something I used to do back in the day. I did that with the Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
But like I feel like highlighting it just helps you memorize, right?
Yeah.
Is that
or
what do you think?
No, I actually don't. I don't highlight to memorize. I actually don't know why I highlight, but I highlight like crazy.
Yeah.
Like one of the books that was a life-changing one for me was Rising Strong by Brene Brown. And that book is just basically all highlighter.
Yeah.
The reason I asked though, like you said that you're reading it 4 or 5 times now. I've always wanted to do this and I haven't done it yet, but I would love to actually buy a new copy for any time I reread a book and then don't even look at the first one and then just naturally highlight like I do, but then go back and compare and be like,
see the difference.
Yeah, because I think our brains change, right? Like we start, our thinking patterns change. We focus on different things. It'd be really interesting to see like, when I read this book the first time compared to the 5th time, what is it like? Is there a pattern there that I can see changing or not? That's something I've always thought about doing.
That's an interesting thought concept, and I'm sure
right?
It would change. Yeah.
Like if to me, it's one of those things where we're spending all this time reading these books because we're probably trying to find an answer or solve something, right, or grow in some way. And sometimes it doesn't feel like we ever learn the lesson or we really grow. Yeah. And so we keep rereading something or we keep beating the same horse to death trying to figure it out. And I mean, I'm convinced at some point something's got to stick, right? So to me, like highlighting again on the 5th read, is that the evidence that something's finally sticking? I don't know.
Huh. It's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, reading is the only thing I've really found in this life so far that really does help me with my mentals. And it's really the only form I've found mentorship in, because you're literally just reading the words of another man or woman dealing with what they're dealing with in life, or their thoughts of life, right? And it's, reading's really helped me a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'd be without it.
I found a lot of really helpful tools from reading. Right now, the thing that's been helping me the most is basically collecting all these different practices from all these different mentors, and then kind of combining and making something that works for me, right?
Yeah.
And so right now I'm calling it like a journal planner. It's this, because I'm a designer, I've designed up my own like 2-sheet journal planner. So it's half planning my day hour by hour, and then it's half journaling with prompts, and then half checking in, like, how did my day go? Did I hit my intentions for that day? What got in my way? How'd that go? How's my sleep? How's my water intake? How's my food? And so I'm checking in on all that stuff now. And the journal bit, like the prompts, one of them is like, write 3 things I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
Say something nice about 3 people in my life, that kind of stuff. That has been really good, where if I feel like I'm in a funk and my self-talk is really negative, or I can tell I'm like kind of angry towards everybody around me.
Yeah.
And if I just check, like, am I just doing the journal or not? And I'll get back to doing that, because I fall away from it sometimes.
Yeah.
And then immediately I can feel, because I do it when I wake up in the morning. So it sets that tone for how I want my brain to be processing that day. And it puts it on a positive track and focusing on something positive. And that has been a big game changer for me.
Yeah. I was journaling a little bit ago, and life happened and I have lost it again, and I need to get back to it. Are you doing it on a digital device, or are you printing these out and then writing it?
So 2 things. I think the act of actually writing. That physicality is really good for us. I think kind of what you were saying earlier, the world that we live in is super noisy with all the digital connection that we have. And I'm actually disconnecting from a lot. I'm not on social media anymore. I'm not checking social media. I'm avoiding a lot of digital things so that I have more energy for focusing on who's in front of me, like us right now, or my coworkers, or my girlfriend, or my dog, or family, or whoever it might be. Trying to free up more energy to give to them when I'm with them. So anyway, that's digression. But I write because I want that physicality, that tactileness. But also I'm printing it because I want to limit my journaling. What I found is not helpful for me is to just have a blank book and then just like spend 30 minutes just venting, basically.
I've done that too much. I'm like, dude, you got to reel it in, because this is too much.
And then you go back and read it, and nothing is really constructive, really. You're kind of just brain vomiting a little bit.
Right.
But when you have something that's prompted and it's controlled space and it's writing, so you're not able to go to font size 6 and like put in a book in there. It's speed. So I get done journaling within 10 minutes. If that. And so you're getting speed, so you're still freeing up your day to get after goals. But just, it's a little bit more constructive and helping, like I said, set your brain on the right track.
So you just print it out a day at a time, and then you pencil it in. And you're not scanning it back in or anything like that.
No,
right?
I've got I actually keep them all, and I found paper that's already pre-punched, and I've got a 3-ring binder, and so I print off in the day. Half of it's for morning, half of it's for evening, checking in how the day went. And I'll fill it out before going to bed, put it in the binder, and that's it.
Sounds cool, man. So you, after your military career, how long was that actually, just so...
It was 2 years of not able to do anything, and then it was 2 years of active reserve. So
you did a 4
total, yeah.
Okay, and so you returned to BSU to finish up college, and you graduate with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in illustration. Where did this degree take you right after college?
Yeah, so like we talked about, drawing and illustration was my passion growing up, and when I was one of the biggest reasons I went in the military is because I didn't know what I wanted to do career wise, and I was always told art can't be a career, and so I left for the military, came back, and then finally accepted that wait, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. So went and did the BFA in illustration and graduated, and I'm not kidding you, woke up the next day after graduation and realized I can't make money with this. So, or at least not the kind of stable money that I wanted. Like, So, but with illustration, what it did for me is I got heavily involved with the art community there. I was part of Swell Artist Collective back in Boise. And then I was doing group shows even outside of them. So I was constantly, I think at one point I was doing like 2 shows a month or something and cranking out new illustrations for them. And I primarily am an acrylic painter. So I was cranking out new paintings for these shows. And that taught me, I mean, aside from just going to school, right, and learning art theory and also learning a work ethic there too, it set the foundation I needed to kind of get to where I'm at. So when I graduated, I started Craiglisting design jobs, and all the education that I learned from from illustration, kind of set the foundation to grow there. So I started Craiglisting design jobs and just started like being tenacious and just learning and doing anything I could.
Yeah. Nice. So, how long did you do that for, where you were getting gigs on Craigslist?
Not very long. That didn't last very long. I got a job offer pretty quick after that. And that was my first agency job. And I think I was only Craigslisting. I was also part-time working for a nonprofit, doing some design work for them. I did a big, I don't remember how many pages. It was like 4 or 5 books. And I think when I counted it up, all together was like a 1,200 page total design that I had done for them. Dang. And I did some other like various branding and print stuff for them. So that was kind of where I started cutting my teeth and figuring things out. And then from that, got my first offer at an agency as just a production designer.
What was the nonprofit?
They were called True Step Ministries. I'm not quite sure what they're doing now, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see here.
I know you're into nonprofits. What I can tell you what they are about is actually helping kids with trauma and abuse rehab. So they actually try to work with kids that have grown up in abusive homes and need to transition and learn how to be normal human beings and kind of and grow out of that trauma and abuse that they were raised in. So that's like what they're about at their core.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So how did you get to Spokane?
Let's see. So like I said, Boise was kind of about getting too big, right? And so it was getting harder and harder to live there as a single person. And so and this was about the time that the housing market was starting to really go up across the board. And I was just researching every single state on the West Coast, like 2 states in, researching from north to south, all the cities, and seeing what the housing markets were like. And Spokane was the only one that was still affordable. And I had family here, so I just went on a limb. And I was like, I'm going to try and make it in Spokane. And came here and had some job interviews that I was trying to figure out. And but still came here without a real offer, and just said I'm going to make it happen no matter what. And that's when I got back into freelancing. So I was accepting some freelance gigs, met Matt Bogue, and then did a lot of work for him. And then we just all clicked really well. A lot of good synergy there. So they gave me an offer, and then that gave me the foundation that I needed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, how long after you got into Spokane did they offer you a job?
I got into Spokane October 2019 and became part of Houdini January.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Pretty quick.
That's cool, man.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah. So, let's see here. One thing I wanted to talk about, we were talking about books here, earlier, self-help and all that kind of stuff. And you spend time going to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start, and how has it changed your life? And
I started about 2011. And the reason I started actually was one of my college friends said to me one time, because she was also seeing a therapist, and she said to me, she's like, you might consider starting to see a therapist. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Why? And she's like, well, I knew it was time for me to see a therapist when my problems were too big for my friends. And essentially, like, my friends don't know how to talk to me through it or talk about it with me, right?
yeah.
And that was kind of a clicking moment. And it was a kind of a big decision because I was raised to think that, like, if you go to a therapist, you're weak.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
And I'm a big advocate for people seeing a therapist. And a lot of times it could probably just be counseling, because there is a difference there, right? Therapy is something that's a bit more extreme. It's something that's like you're really trying to address a behavioral problem, where counseling is maybe you're just having something difficult in your life and you need someone to talk through it with you, right? And it's okay to not need therapy and only need like a counselor.
Right.
That's totally fine. Or need the other too. It's totally okay to need therapy.
Yeah.
And even for me, like, it ebbs and flows. Like, sometimes I'm in counseling and sometimes I'm in therapy. And I think the big thing about it is that it's very much like a year-long, like years and years of a process, right? You don't just see a therapist for a month and then you're fixed. Because sometimes there's just like some really rooted problems, like, that are behavioral problems that doesn't work. It's not serving you anymore. And you're trying to figure out, like, why does this keep cropping up? Why do I keep dealing with this same thing? And that's where, like, sometimes I'll ebb and flow through, like, my interval with seeing somebody is I like to always try to have the same person. I've worked through a lot of people, and it's okay to decide that a therapist doesn't fit you. Like, they very much have to be a good fit for you. But the person I'm with now, I'm really happy with, and I'll go through, like, seeing them once a month, seeing them once a week, seeing them every other week. It just depends on, like, kind of what's starting to get revealed, right? Because sometimes it's like, I don't really know why I'm here, but you still show up waiting for something to kind of be undone, because it takes time, and sometimes you just don't know why you're still there. And I think it's important to stick with it because the process needs time.
Yeah, definitely. I've only seen 2 therapists in my life. One for probably only a few sessions. I just really didn't like him.
Yeah,
honestly,
I think it's okay.
I just was like, I don't like this dude, and I just didn't feel like he had the experience in life of what I was dealing with.
Yeah,
it was all just theoretical to him, and I've really been through it, and he hadn't been through this kind of stuff that I had been dealing with. And then another person I was seeing during, like, COVID time, like right in the middle of it. So I had to do it online, and she was okay. I saw her probably for, I don't know, like 10 sessions probably or so. But I feel like there was just a major disconnect. One, because it was virtual. I don't feel like I can connect,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know there's different types of therapies, but I didn't feel like she was drawing enough out of me. It was just like me venting, and that was that. I don't know. I feel like I need a more intensive type of therapy. I don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
What different therapies you've maybe been through, or
I mean, I felt
not?
the same way sometimes. The person I'm seeing currently, when we first started, I actually told them that I wanted them to be a little firm with me. And I said, I think I tend to, what did I say to her? I think I said something like, I think I can talk myself around a therapist sometimes. Like I need someone who can be a little bit firm and like catch me in my shit and talk to me about it. Right.
Yeah.
And what I found was, I think that their training that's not really like what they're trained to do. I don't think. I haven't really met a therapist who's like a tough love kind of therapist. They'll challenge you for sure, but I think it depends on who you are and what you need, because they're pretty good at figuring that out. And maybe someone needs tough love, where like for me, I don't think she gave me that, even though I asked for it, because she knows what I need is actually something that's a bit more like loving, kind of recharge, like rebuild what it means to love.
Yeah.
And so I think she knows me well enough to know that being tough love with me isn't going to create that.
For sure.
And so I think that sometimes it's okay to tell therapists like kind of what you're hoping for, but they're always going to still figure you out and kind of adapt to what they think is the medicine that you need, even if it's not what we think we need.
Yeah. And maybe, part of it for me is just, sticking with a therapist for a longer period of time, of course. And like, I don't know, I just felt like every time I just, say my thoughts and they're like, okay, well, yeah. And cause I'm a very self-aware person. So
Sure.
They're like, well, it sounds like you know,
That's not enough.
and I'm like, well, like I need your perspective I need something more here than me just like, well, it sounds like you really you know how to think through it. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, I know self-awareness, but my self-awareness is crippling.
So you hit on a really important point. I did see a guy that I left after probably not very many, like it was maybe 4 or 5 sessions. And he was doing that. He was just being kind of a nodder and a yes man.
Yeah.
And it's because I think that there's levels to the game, right? Just like anything else. There's levels of a therapist where they just want to give some fundamental tools, like to just teach someone some basic like 101 stuff of like critical thinking or problem solving, or like figuring out how to like even identify your feeling and emotion. What's the emotion? The emotion is anger. Why is it anger? Like, why do you feel angry? And so there's some real like 101 level therapy, right? And then there's stuff like what you're talking about where, and this is how my therapist is for me, which is it's somebody who will talk with me. She knows that I have the fundamental tools. She knows that I know how to like work through something and not let it spiral me. Like if I'm spiraling, I can catch it and bring myself down and stop. And so she doesn't need to teach me those basic tools. What I need is something that is probably a bit larger, and I'll be a little bit vulnerable here. I really struggle with giving love and receiving love. So trying to figure out how to find the core of that, because that's something that is not working for me. It's not serving me. I need to be able to give love to people around me, and I need to be able to receive it. And that's something that is really deep seated because I did grow up in an abusive home. And so she's digging real deep with me and helping unravel that essentially. Yeah. So,
well, that's good. Yeah. I think that what you explained there is more what I want to have, someone where we're talking with each other. It's not just me like, all right, are you just going to let me keep talking because, well, this is what's going on. Like, but what's your professional, take on it all, or like what psychoses am I maybe dealing with here? Because I feel like it's a lot more deep rooted, with the things that I'm experiencing. And I need to feel like I feel like I have to be with somebody that can help me along the process of identifying the more deeper rooted psychosis that I'm dealing with and unshackling my mind. Because sometimes that's just how I feel in life. It's like no matter what I know I'm capable of, or no matter what I want to do, it's like there's something that is, I feel chained down to. And I think it's deep rooted trauma that I don't know how to forgive or let go of, or forget, all that kind of stuff, and it's just because like I've seen these patterns of behavior over and over and over again so many times now that I'm at this age. I can identify it, but I don't necessarily know how to stop it anymore, like for good. And I don't know if you can ever for good. I don't know, but I can only probably find that answer within some kind of professional therapy, help. I think here.
If you don't mind me saying, a couple thoughts that I have for you is, one, try to give yourself some forgiveness, right? Like, be kind to yourself. We won't be perfect. And I think that too, like, psychosis is a pretty extreme thing. You likely don't have a psychosis of any kind. You're like, no,
I put on a good show, bro. But I mean, there's I know how to probably mask it pretty well in front of people.
Yeah.
But man, behind the scenes, sometimes, bro, I'm in really, really dark places. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying. That's what I don't know. That's what scares me. You know what I mean? I don't know. Do I have it? Do I not? Am I dealing with things that are a lot more severe than I'm aware of or knowledgeable of? Because I want to rely on strength, on what I think a man should be, and figuring this out on my own, with my own strong will. But I've gotten to a place where it's broken me down so far that I barely have the energy to deal with life a lot of times in general. And I'm just weary from that struggle of trying to deal with these mental struggles all by myself and not having professional help, I think. And maybe it's not as severe as I may allude to.
I'm by no means trying to minimize it all, like, because like obviously I'm not you, right? Like I don't know the weight of what it is that you feel. I would say from what I'm hearing, I would definitely encourage you to like keep trying to hunt down the therapist that that works for you, right? And it's okay to tell them like, hey, I feel like and I think it's okay to tell them like, hey, I'm trying out a few different people right now. I'm trying to find the right fit for me too.
Yeah.
And just go like try some people out.
Yeah.
I think it does probably take, at least 4 sessions to know if somebody's not going to be the right fit.
Yeah.
But they interview, the person I'm seeing now, she interviewed me, and she was trying to decide if I was a right fit for her even too, right?
Right.
So I think if that could be a sign of a good therapist is if they tell you like, hey, I'm interviewing you two to figure out if this will work. So I think that's something to consider. But for sure, I would say keep trying to find someone to talk to.
Yeah, I think I'm going to. I mean, seeing that, about your self-help, how you see, you said seeing professional, and I was like, well, I'm guessing that's a therapist of some sort. And I have some other friends that are seeing therapists, marriage counseling, and different things like that. And a lot of my friends, males, are seeing therapists, and it's something that it's maybe when I was a younger man, like that first therapist I saw, there was probably a lot of me in me at that time where I was like, I don't need this shit.
Yeah.
And I think that might even potentially been like a court ordered thing. And I was interested, but as soon as I met the guy, I was just like, I don't need this, but during the COVID time, I was very open to it, but I did not feel with that therapist that I was getting, that she was bringing out, or we weren't getting to anywhere. After 10 sessions, I'm like, this is the same me just telling you what I'm struggling with, dealing with, but there's no, it wasn't, I don't know. I just didn't feel anything happening with it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it can take time. I would say I made big strides in my journey with it between 2016 and 2020, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's when I made big strides in 2012 to 2013 too. There was some big changes that happened. But for a while there, it did, because it does take a while to feel like you're making progress, and then progress will happen, right? Like it just kind of, like, here's a metaphor. I also play guitar, and I grew up playing guitar, taking lessons playing guitar. And I had, for a long time, was in lessons, and I couldn't figure out how to strum. I was like, why? Maybe me and guitar just doesn't work, right? And I was like, I'm never going to know how to play music. I don't know how to strum a guitar. And I was sitting there on my bed and practicing, doing the practice session. And I was, I think, on a C chord or something like that. And I was just doing my normal, like, and I was zoned out. And it's like, I'm never going to be able to play. And then all of a sudden I heard what sounded like a song, and I looked down, and my hand is actually strumming a rhythm for the first time ever. And I kind of feel like that's how therapy is. Like, you're showing up, you're doing all this talking, and you're just like, man, am I ever gonna like break past this stuff that's holding me back? And then one morning you realize, like, oh shit, like that's behind me, I'm done with that.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I feel like that's a good analogy for accomplishing anything in life too. Like, takes a long time sometimes to see any results, and you have to be okay with that.
And it takes, like, kind of full circle here, that idea of discipline, right? It takes a lot of discipline to stick with something that's hard to get to bear, like, to have the benefit of it, right? I think, like, our society is such a high on-demand society that we don't have the patience to be disciplined for hard things anymore.
No.
If it's not hard, it means it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's hard because it's worth it.
Yeah, it's really, really true. I think our society is trying to sell us all pleasure, you know, like instant pleasure for everything. Like, but really what's going on for those that make it is you have to be willing to sustain a lot of pain and suffering and uncomfortability to become great at something, to get to big results. At least that's my experience. And I feel like most people that are honest, that are successful, they have that same, you know, story. They're willing to be vulnerable and you know, talk about that it's really hard, and it'll break you trying to get to be somebody great in life. So, yeah. And greatness is a perspective thing. You know what I mean? We all have probably a different view on what becoming great would mean to each of us.
Totally. Each of us, different goals, different results. Yeah, I think so too.
But I think you're right. You know, something I've always heard from people, because I've always had such high aspirations, is you know, having more forgiveness for myself, and something that I've been learning for sure. Just being more accepting of my flaws, and with that acceptance, you know, comes more grace, which allows me not to have that self-deprecating mentality that can spiral you down and out of control. And I have more of a more tighter net now to catch that.
That's great.
You know, when it starts to happen now. Because I have that thermostat. I can get warm. I'm getting in the zone, and then behaviors come, or things that my subconscious controls that I don't even know of, because I really think the mind has a lot more power with our surroundings than we even can really truly understand. And that subconscious, it's up to some things, you know what I mean, really to keep you where it wants you to be in this reality.
There's some subliminal stuff going on internally for sure.
Yeah. And so even recently, like just the things, I was like really in a good zone, And then we had the fires out in Medical Lake where I'm from, so I was dealing with that. And then there was just some other things going on in life. And then I get sick, and I'm just like, did I get myself sick? You know what I mean? Like, I don't usually get sick, but all this stress and all these things and different mannerisms that came back, you know, it's like I think about those things. I don't play victim because I got sick. I'm like, this sucks. I'm like, how did I get sick? What did I play in this of getting sick? Is there something that I could have done better to avoid? Because like I said, I usually don't get sick. I think your immune system weakens when your mind weakens, you know, and so there's just different things that I think about like that.
I almost never get sick when I'm working, but the second I go on vacation, I'm immediately sick. Without fail. And so I'm pretty sure that my subconscious doesn't allow me to get sick. And then when I'm on vacation, it's just like, all right, you're getting sick.
Yeah. We're kind of on this subject, but talk about learning to believe in yourself when others don't.
Yeah. That's a big thing for me because, so like I said, after college, I graduated with illustration, knew it wasn't going to provide the stable income that I wanted and consistent income. And so I adopted graphic design. Well, graphic design is just, that whole world is really competitive, right? And also I'm coming in unproven, untested, like didn't go to college for it. And I know that in college they have a pretty, like, there's halfway through their degree where they basically have to get approved to continue on. So even the competition is like drilled into them within the college itself. And so I'm competing, I'm doing all this kind of on my own, right? And so it kind of created this experience where I felt like I was always proving myself, proving that I was good enough. And then like you have moments where you come up against something that you don't know, and then you're learning, right? And there was definitely some learning on the job while ago. So there was experiences along the way that I would say were not so fun, right? Like there was some hard experiences, whether that's with an employer or a client that is just like kind of what you were saying earlier about like they know your nerve and they're just like digging their finger into it, right? And so it creates an opportunity to have a lot of self-doubt, like, am I really capable of doing this? Is this really the right career path for me? And I just knew that it's what I wanted to do, and my tenacity and my discipline and my work ethic really kind of made up for the not going to college for graphic design, right? But it also gave me a unique perspective. Like, because of my experience, I do bring something unique to the table. And with my illustration and being able to bring that in and actually utilize it in ways that graphic design students actually weren't taught. And so it actually gives me a leg up in some ways, makes me a little bit different. But then also just who I am, the way my brain works was very geared for UIUX. And I actually grew up as a kid teaching myself code and doing web designs in Photoshop, like Photoshop 2. And so it was always like part of my, like, for real, right? Like
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and I was, as a kid, I don't know if you know Amigas or not. They're a computer, a really old one.
I don't know. I might have used them in school or something.
Yeah. So they had a DOS on them. And so I was like constantly breaking those machines that my dad would buy because I knew enough to like break it, right? So I'd be in there typing away on, digging around in the DOS files and messing things up. And then I would go and like code my own. It was all inline CSS back in the day. So I'd be doing my own HTML and CSS, writing my own like personal websites. They weren't host it anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I would be doing all these crazy like designs in Photoshop and slicing them up and dropping them into frames. Like that's how sites were built back then.
Yeah.
Like, you remember the old like framed out websites where you got a sidebar and a top and then you got flaming like fire and then like jeweled buttons.
Yeah.
I was doing stupid stuff like that. So that was kind of like where my root came in. And then I get an actual like education of how art really works, and then combine the two later in my life. So it's kind of crazy that like went illustration, design, and then through that started getting like some web development experience and web design experience, and then that full circled back to like UI/UX, which is kind of where my brain was at as a kid.
Yeah. So was there just a lot of people that like doubted your career choice around you, or
just doubts your ability, right? Like constantly one employer specifically, I don't really want to get into names, but
no need to,
one of them specifically was a really toxic environment and not mentally a very healthy person. And so there was a lot of rebuilding I had to do with my self-image after that. And a lot of reinventing that had to happen. And I think at the core of it is for me, I couldn't lose sight of what I wanted and where I wanted to be in life. And I had to just be absolutely like relentless in my drive towards that, right? And it didn't matter how many stumbles I had to keep picking myself up. And I remember at one point, I was having a really hard time and with my career, and it seemed like it was going to be done. It wasn't going to go where I wanted it to go. And we've kind of talked about this, but taking kind of ownership and being disciplined, right? And there was this moment, and I remember it clear as day. I had been basically whining for a while, not doing anything, kind of like falling into a slump and spiraling really hard. And then I kind of snapped, and I realized nobody's going to fix this but me. Nobody's going to save me. I have to save myself. And my mental, everything where my head was at completely flopped. I quit whining. I started showing up to coffee shops every single day, doing the extra training that I needed, building the extra portfolio pieces, doing the extra research and all this stuff, and building and creating the foundation for where I wanted to go. And so it's like, I think what I'm trying to say is that just don't lose faith in yourself. If you know that that's what's right for you and that's where you want to be, put in the extra time and get yourself there, because no one else is going to save you.
Yeah. No one else is going to save you. That's especially, when you're taking maybe an untraditional route in the creative realms. It's no one's gonna save you.
And it is very untraditional. It's really hard to know. Like when I talk to younger designers, because I've volunteered and done like I'm trying to remember what it was called, but I did like some portfolio reviews and some things like that, and talked to some younger students right now, and the path is very unclear. Like they still are trying to get a grasp of like, well, how do I even get a job? And it's not very clear to them, right? And so I think that and there's so many different ways to enter in. Like for me, I didn't even go to graphic design school, but I'm a really good graphic designer. And so I entered in through like a very different route. And so there's, I think, a lot of people who are coming in from ways that aren't traditional. And so trying to figure out how you fit into the thing and how you can find a place in it. I think we all can have a place as long as we're just, I don't want to say as long as you're good at what you do, but as long as you're just really committed to being the best version of yourself that you can be, and constantly being open to learning.
Yeah. This is a good question that follows up on that. Like, how do you view the importance of showing up to accomplish something every day?
Being open to that you don't know the best way to do it. I think that it's important to be confident in what you know and be really like show up knowing your stuff, ready to talk about it and be good at talking about it, but also be really open to somebody else might know something you don't. Because it doesn't matter how many books we read, how much time we're on the internet, how good at Googling we are. There's always going to be somebody who knows something that we don't. And we just need to be very open to accepting that. I think the second that we think we know everything and we're super closed off, it means you can't collaborate with people very well. You can't take feedback very well. And so that makes you not fun to work with, right? And so I think that it's important to be open to receiving other people's ideas, other people's input, but also being willing to give it too, because you might know something they don't know. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but I just think it's really important to show up willing to learn something new.
Well, yeah. And have you struggled or with just the fact of just showing up, like just getting there? Just
sometimes. Yeah. It's not all like, not everything is like green pastures, right? There's times when work kind of sucks. Like the client work isn't really that fun.
Right.
Maybe the client's not very fun. That definitely happens.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it's a slog. It's like, let's just get this project done. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think it matters. Like, I think we all deal with it. I don't think there's a single agency or group out there who doesn't deal with it. It's part of doing client work. Sometimes you're going to do something you don't like. Yeah. So I think, but it's important to be grateful for the work that does come in, right? Because without them, we wouldn't be doing it. So exactly. I think it is really important to be grateful for client work, even if it's not the most creative project in the world. And that's kind of another thing that I learned along the way was from my illustration group. I lived with a tattoo artist named Erin Ruiz, and if you haven't checked her out, her stuff is incredible. I think it's actually, I might have messed up her last name. It might be Reese, and she might shoot me if she hears this. But anyway, check her out. She's incredible. But she mixes her professional work and her personal work, right? She's a really, really good illustrator, but she's also a tattoo artist. So tattoo is client work, illustration is passion work. And she said something to me one time where she's like, client work is client work. If it's not super fun, that's okay. Save that creative energy for your personal work. Like, don't fight the client work to make it what you want it, because really it's for them. Yeah. So don't fight them to like try to prove and have an outlet for yourself. Save all that energy and push it, like put it into your passion work. So that was a gold nugget that I picked up along the way.
Yeah. I think that's good advice for a creative and dealing with clients, because you have to just do the work and saving that energy for what you want to create, instead of like, oh, I want to take this direction because of your creative mind, and they don't have that same vision, or I think it's okay to try and like state your case to a client. Like I usually with a client, if I can feel if they're not really like digging the direction I want to head, I'll try once, maybe twice, to try and kind of double down on why I think it's a really strong direction for them. But if they're bucking it every time, then it's like, cool, no problem. We'll get it the direction that you want to go. And sometimes you just kind of have to accept that. And I think it's just really important. Just don't let your brain shift into thinking they're an enemy when they're not. You know, you're collaborating with clients to get something that is for them. They're going to own it. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good one. It's a struggle sometimes initially, like when you're in situations with clients where it's just like, but at the end of the day, trying to remember, like, they're helping me make a living, and I want to deliver them a great product that they can be happy with. Not necessarily what I'm happy with, like what's going to make them happy. I also do believe, though, so for people listening, and if you're going to start a business that's client based, working with them directly on projects that some people are just not the right fit.
Sometimes, yeah.
And it's, I mean, for me, my perspective is like, I will say no to people, or if they become too strenuous to work with, I just don't care. But that's going to have its implications,
Definitely
pros, cons,
happens.
you know? So
yeah. I had a thought too that I wanted to, this might be a really direct answer for you too. I think the idea of showing up is, it's super important not to be precious about client work. That doesn't mean don't take a ton of pride and put your best effort into it. That's not what it means at all. Being precious means that this is my baby. Don't you mess it up. And we can't be precious about client work. We can be precious about our personal work.
Yeah.
And we can not accept direction and feedback all day long, right? Because it's mine.
Yeah.
But when it's client work for your own mental health, it's super important not to be precious about it.
I think that's great advice. Yeah. Not to take it so personal when
Definitely
client work.
not personal.
Yeah.
Because it's not. Like, some clients will try to make it personal. And that probably kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier about kind of losing faith in yourself, that kind of thing. Is that sometimes along the path, somebody's going to make it personal.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to be a very strong mind to kind of push through that, and don't lose faith in yourself, and keep staying on the path, right? Of what your career is and where you want to head.
There's a great chapter in that Mastery of Love book where it talks about taking nothing personal from anybody in life in general. Like, nothing's personal. They are only projecting onto you what their story is and their perspective.
I like that.
And it's only up to you whether you want to accept it or not.
Yeah.
Whether you want to believe it or not, that's up to you. But you know, it really goes in on, you know, like, don't take anything personal, because our ego wants to take everything personal. It's like, well, this was, you know, I was this, or you did me wrong, or like, right. And it's like you said earlier, like, people aren't thinking of you the way that you think they're thinking of you, you know, like, they're really thinking about themselves and their problem relating to you, but it's not you necessarily. You know what I'm saying? And that one I struggle with, not taking something personal, because I'm a hothead. Like, I react quickly, and I've gotten better as I've matured. But
I used to be a hothead too.
Yeah.
It took a lot of work to come down and be a calmer, more like, don't get me wrong, like, there's certain things that definitely set me off, but it's not this like rage outburst the way I was as a kid. You know?
Same here. I mean, I've reeled it in quite a bit, and it's not like it's compressed either. It's just like I just let go of things and try not to let things bother me nearly as much as I once did, you know.
I'm curious, do you have like a mantra or a saying that you always say to yourself when you're met with those moments?
Not specifically in anger moments. I don't think I've developed one yet.
Yeah.
What's yours?
Not my monkey.
Not my monkey.
Yeah. A friend of mine in back when I was doing gallery shows, her and I were talking one time, and she had picked that up. I don't know why that one has stuck and like
That's
works.
a good one.
Like, we hear all day about like all these different mantras that people come up with. And it's like trying on a piece of clothing, like, oh, that just doesn't fit, get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
But for me, for whatever reason, not my monkey is the perfect fit for me. And I can't tell you how many times, like you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off. I'm just like, not my monkey. I'm not getting sucked into that one.
I like that one. That's a good one. Me and my friend came up with one the other day, just called management. Like, you know, like when somebody's like, coming at you sideways, it's like, well, call management. You know what I mean? Like, saying it like that, like, well, call management. Not my problem.
That one's pretty good.
So I've been using that one lately. Like, you know, if someone's like slightful or anything, I don't know, call management, man. So
I dig that.
we just came up with that like 2 weeks ago or something.
That one's super fun. I might try that one.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've gotten better because the other day, like I'm up on the, well, maybe I won't give general locations because this might, if this person somehow was listening to this podcast, would identify me. But I was driving. This person goes into the passing lane, passes me and two other cars, and then gets back over into a single lane again. And then we get to a red light. He's still only those two cars in front of me. It was totally unnecessary what he did. You know what I mean? Like this is a turning lane, not a passing lane. Total just dick move. And then we get up to where it opens up to a 2-lane, 4-lane, but two-way this way, right? And I end up just pulling up right next to him. I'm just looking at him like, what was that about, dude? Like, and he's just like, flips me off, and I'm just like, all right, man. Like, just like took off slow, It's just like, okay, dude, not my monkey.
Totally.
So, I mean, before I probably would have, made it my problem though. Like,
me too. I used to get sucked into traffic stuff and not anymore.
Yeah.
I can confidently say.
Yeah, because it's just so ridiculous. I think that's somewhere where I finally got to in life. Like, this is all so ridiculous. Like, I just laugh at it more than I get angry most of the time now. And even if I'm a little ticked off, I'm still like, it's just so ridiculous that person did that or whatever. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to make a point to teach them a lesson necessarily. Yeah. But, I feel like I handled that well because I was just looking at them, not like, I'm going to mess you up or anything. I was just looking at them like, what is happening with this person? And,
like what's going on?
They look at me and obviously, they felt whatever they were feeling and flipped me off. And I'm just like, okay, all right, man.
My girlfriend and I've gotten in the habit of asking, like we try to be quicker at this now, but we're like, what's really going on?
Yeah.
Like when something's got us like flared up and we're stuck and we're just being on a loop, right? Like we're saying the same thing over and over and just getting riled up over and over and over. We try to ask each other like, what's really going on?
That's a huge question, I love that question. And I ask that often in just everyday life and personal life. Like when things start to really unravel, like what's really happening here? Because, for me, I'm a big believer there's dark energies at play that manipulate situations for whatever reason the balance of this universe happens. I don't understand it fully, but I can see it. You can see like this thing come in between people that's not how they really feel about each other, but it can easily like turn into this nasty energy between people that love each other or whatever. And it's really... And there's other aspects this could happen to you, your own self in life, like your own self-sabotage. Like what's really happening right now? Like why is this like a good example is like wake up in the morning, something goes wrong, you get mad about it, and then it sets the tone for the rest of the day where like you're under attack. Everything. Like it could be in traffic, like, okay, something at home happened in the morning that agitated you, then you leave and then there's people that almost sideswipe you and it just continues on throughout the day. That's when I'm like, what is happening? Like I need to slow down, get out the way or whatever. So asking that question, I think has been a huge realization for me to help me get back control. I feel like once you ask that question, you kind of regain control instead of just being in that vacuum of where that energy is sucking you to, whether that's some metaphysical energy or whether it's just the energy that we can't really fully understand that we create ourselves. But bringing that roots you, I think, that question, like what's really happening here?
It's a speed bump, right? I think, have you heard the word confabulating?
I don't believe I have.
Brene Brown uses it a lot. And it's in the book Rising Strong I mentioned earlier, and she defines what confabulating is. And what you were talking about is that it's where your thoughts are going in a loop, right? And you're spinning stories and narratives that don't really exist. And it's keeping you in that emotional state so that it doesn't matter what new event happens around you, you respond to it in the same way that you are because you've been confabulating. You're keeping yourself stuck in this emotional state. And that question of like, what's really going on is that speed bump to like knock that loose and undo it and get you on a different mental path, right? A different emotional set.
Yeah. I like that. Confabulating. And the book is Rising Strong.
Yeah.
I've read one of her books, I believe, and I've listened to one. So I have to check that one.
Out of all her books, I recommend that one the most because, in my opinion, and she might say otherwise if I were sitting here talking to her, but I think it's the only book that has tools. The rest of her stuff is very like philosophical and very theory based.
Right.
Where Rising Strong, I think, is the first and only one so far that's like, here's the tools, here's a process. And for me, that was why
that's huge. Yeah.
It was a big book.
Okay. I'm going to get that. I'm going to order that one today.
Yeah.
I got a few more questions. 2 more. And we can close it up. What breed is your dog, Dax?
He's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier.
Okay.
Do you know those?
I mean, I know both those breeds kind of, but I can't imagine.
It's a purebred. It's basically...
Oh, is it pure?
Yeah, it's basically a miniature pit bull.
Yeah.
But technically they're not pit bulls. But anyway, that's the whole...
So what was the full breed again?
A Staffordshire Bull Terrier. He's a 40-pound little pit-looking thing.
I love pits. I had a blue nose, Keikoa. He was my first dog. Love that dude.
Yeah.
He passed away.
Oh,
he was 14, so he lived his life.
Yeah.
But I miss him. He passed away about a year ago.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was hard. I don't think I'm still dealing with that one, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that dude was, like, such a amazing being, you know?
I love dogs, man. They're our best friends.
I have to see a picture of Dax.
Yeah, I'll show you.
For some reason, I thought of Staffordshire.
Yeah, so it's pronounced Staffordshire.
Staffordshire.
Yeah, so he's actually an English breed. So
right.
The movie Snatch.
Yeah,
that's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier in that.
Oh yeah.
The one that swallows the ball.
Yeah,
that's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier.
Yeah.
So they're really interesting. They are a blood breed. They were used to take down bulls in blood sport, and so there would be a pack of them, all these little 40-pound dudes trying to take down this giant bull, right?
Yep.
And the way they would do it is they would latch onto the bull's nose and drag the bull to the ground and then kill it.
Wow. Yeah, I read some history on pit bulls before and read about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. I love pit and those kind of breeds. I don't know. I just feel like they encapsulate what I think a dog should be, from my opinion.
Amazing.
But
I think they're a very misunderstood breed. I don't agree that they're dangerous. I think this is my own personal opinion, pit bulls in general, whether it's American Staffordshire or any other variation, I think they have the biggest capacity to love. And so their heart is already maxed out on full love. And the second they get abused, it pendulums and goes to full, like, I'm going to mess you up. And the problem is they got the power to back it up, right?
Yeah.
But, man, they're just built for wanting to love. I mean, Dax's breed is nicknamed the nanny dog because they were so good at being a nanny for little babies and kids.
Yeah.
They're incredible.
Yeah, I agree. They're big lovers, big babies.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want them, to be, it's up to the human that raises them, really.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It's all human based.
It's not the dog. It's the human that if there's a problem with it. So, yeah. And my last question is, what do you love about Spokane?
I love that it brings back that vibe that I miss in Boise, which is that smaller, it's easier to meet people, it's easier to get something started. The golden age for me in Boise was, it felt like there was nothing but potential. Like you could start anything you want to start. And that's, I think Spokane is primed for that.
Yeah.
It's not so big that can't happen anymore, where you just get smothered out by all the big companies, right? excuse me, but it's small. Like it is big enough to be able to network and do things, but small enough that like you can do and start up anything you want to start.
Opportunity is still great here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the best years of Spokane are yet to come. Like talking to Matt and other locals quite a bit. From what I understand, Spokane kind of hit a slump and it's trying to pull itself back out. And I think that there's only good things that if it keeps like metaphorically what they're doing in Riverfront, if the city keeps trying to rise itself up, and I'm not saying just beautify, right? Like I'm talking about more, but if the locals and everybody keeps just striving to create and do new things and do bigger things, like there's nothing but good things for Spokane to come.
Yeah, I think I see so much opportunity for Spokane still, and I have seen it for a long time, and that's why I've decided to stay here and you know, develop this brand, City Chapters, based upon, you know, representing Spokane and other cities, but this is my city, and the potential here is immense, and yeah, what you know. And I've seen the change over the years, too, of the growth that we're experiencing. And, you know, this city is a lot better than it was 10 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
way better.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see the change finally take root and the growth that's happening now.
Yeah. I think that I'm just someone who's moved here recently, right? Like I've lived here now for a little over 3 years, I guess. I'm coming up on 4 years soon. I can feel the pride from the locals who are originals that have been born and raised here, even though like there's definitely some rough edges, but there's still pride here. There's still love for the city. There's still people, groups that are trying to make something of it, right? To improve on it and add to it. And there's people who are not willing to let Spokane just stay in the gutter or be in the gutter, right? They want to elevate it. And I think that you get enough people and it's inevitable.
It's inevitable. Yeah. That's what I believe that same thing. Big part of why I do this podcast is so that I can talk and connect with individuals, and, you know, we can all, you know, have a unified effort at some point. Individual efforts that are collective in making the change, though, too, and joining up if the fit's right. But
yeah,
man, cool.
On a selfish note, and I'll end it here, the biggest reason that I selfishly love this is the outdoors that it's surrounded by.
Yeah.
You can go in any direction, pick a sport, and it's there within like 10 minutes. I'm a huge outdoor junkie, and I wouldn't say huge. There's definitely like elitists out there, but I love outdoors.
Yeah.
And just the opportunity, whether it's lakes or trails or mountain biking or rock climbing or camping or whatever, there's so much to do.
So much. Yeah, we have amazing outdoors around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Super easy access. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right near Canada, too, which has amazing wilderness.
My dream, I haven't ever been into Canada before. I want to go to Banff really bad.
Yeah, Banff is, I've never been there, but I mean, I've been up in Canada, up in the inlets of BC, and just unreal beauty up there.
It's
unreal.
insane.
Yeah,
It's
and
so
Banff
cool.
looks unreal, and it's not far away from here.
No, it's closer than Boise.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sweet, man. Well, I guess we'll close it up.
Cool.
That was an
Thank you.
awesome podcast. All right. I'm Bobby J. This is City Chapters podcast. That chapter was with James McKain from Houdini Studio. And we'll see you next time.